Welcome to Thriving in Multifamily, a visionary podcast brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network. Join in as we explore motivation, inspiration, and engage in thought-provoking conversations. We provide actionable ideas to help you establish a solid foundation to achieve your career goals. I am your host, Lissi Daniels, and I'm excited to bring you inspiring stories that will empower you to reach your full potential. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Thriving in Multifamily. And in life, I can't help but laugh for a second. I'll tell you
We're already having fun.
We already have this intro. But welcome again to my podcast episode. I am your host, Lissi Daniels, and I have the fabulous guest, Angie Callen, that is on. Hello.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Yes, we got a lot to kind of catch up on a little bit from the last time when I was on your podcast, Normal Monday. So this will be fun to dive into, but I want to give a little bit of some nuggets of who Angie is in this industry. She is an award-winning coach, an international speaker, and entrepreneur dedicating to empowering others to build thriving careers while embracing authenticity. Man, that speaks volumes. Can I be like you one day?
I feel like you said that even better than I do. I might have to take that.
You know, that's what I'm all about. I make you sound amazing, which you are. I definitely think you bring so much to the table within just worldwide, but just in our industry and more. And I kind of want to just get some insights with you on regarding why is it such your passion, right? With what you're doing currently as far as within your roles.
Well, and I have opinions about everything, so I'm quite happy to have my brain picked and share them. But I think one, if we're focusing on this idea of authenticity, and this is something you and I share, Lissi, is I don't know how to be anything other than myself.
Yes.
And to some extent, I can't understand people that aren't like that. But I also think society oftentimes puts pressures on us to, posture and things like that. But because I don't know and have always just been very much me, I feel like I'm almost on a mission, or my purpose is to help others do the same, because it is in that knowing and authenticity that you really tap into your strengths and the gifts and what you're meant to bring to this world. And I feel like that's really what I'm doing at the core, is helping others reach their potential so that we can all have the impact we're really meant to have. And it's much easier and more fulfilling to do that when you just shed who you're trying to be and just embrace who you actually are.
Oh my God, 100% I agree with you. I think it's taken me a long time to shed that and allow the trueness to come forward, because people want to see that. They want to know and relate to that. But it also helps within your career, but also in your personal journey and your growth, right? And that's what I loved about how that's one of your biggest passions is authenticity. But why do you think people find it so hard to really embrace, with it?
I think it's a really interesting topic to think about that in the current time and place that we live, because I think that always there's been an element of I need to be who others think I should be, or I need to be who they want me to be. And I think a lot of that has become more substantial, more common, and there's more pressure around that due to social media and how much information flow there is and how public a lot of our lives are. And what we see on people's Facebook feeds isn't actually their life. It's a best of reel, because we don't share the shit, right? And so because of that,
right?
We feel like we have to keep up those same appearances instead of just being comfortable with who we are and what we have to give to this world. And that's why I think this is such an important topic in general, and even more so now.
Yeah, no, 100%. I've been really tapping more and more in regards to authenticity, but it also falls in line with empowering, right? How do you empower individuals to be the best they do? And you being an award-winning coach, you kind of tap into that every single day, and doing it. How do you assess that? What do you look for to help people thrive to be better than who they were?
I think there's a few things there. One, this is one of those things that once people tell you you're good at it enough, you realize it's something that was always there. Is I see that in people. I can oftentimes see somebody or some things potential or future state And so for me, it's almost leading them to something that I am able to see, but they need to come to that realization. And so in able to have that foresight, it's almost like you know what to ask or you know what to help them uncover. But some of it also comes with helping people realize what's possible versus what they assume is not possible, and removing barriers and like debunking myths around things that we tell ourselves, or those limiting beliefs that are rooted in us from childhood, that we never stop and look at and question whether they serve us now, and oftentimes keep us from stepping into a thing simply because we've told ourselves one thing and never stopped to evaluate
Yeah.
whether or not it's actually true for you now. And I think peeling back those layers oftentimes really gets people to the core of a matter and the heart of something, and the realization that a dream is not as quite as outlandish as it might seem once you start evaluating various ways to attack it.
Wow. I think you said you dropped some really insightful nuggets there. And I think one of the things I was like, I love that. But I definitely can agree with you when it comes to debunking myths, right? I think one thing I have been really focused on this year, coming off of a hard season last year and health wise, and then coming into this season and really owning that authenticity, but also perfection is a myth, right?
Yeah, that's something that's been coming up a lot lately in my world.
But why are we so stronghold on perfection? And that goes back to that imposter syndrome and a little bit of piece of us that we're always overthinking things. At least I know I am. Like right before this episode, I was overthinking things.
Oh, absolutely. And I feel like we're also conditioned by perfectionism. One, because of the public nature of society today, and we think we have to keep up that appearance. But even for those of us that come from a certain generation, we were held to that like perfectionism standard.
Yeah.
And there are positive pieces of perfectionism that have a time and place. If I'm going to a surgeon, you sure as hell better bet I'm hoping he's having a close to perfect day. However, in most other places in life, it actually holds us back and is the antithesis of progress, whether that's personally or professionally or in business or in leadership.
Yeah, no, 100%. As you can see, I'm always about the 100% in agreement because I think it's just you hitting the nail on so many different things. And I think that's so important for people to understand that, like debunk those myths, understand that what you bring to the table and your value, what it is important. And as leaders, I think that's even most important when you bring that to your teams and empower them, right?
Well,
So,
I'll even add something to this is that it's in the imperfections that we actually start to learn, right?
ah,
There really is no, and do not own this statement, but there really is no such thing as failure. A
mm,
human cannot be a failure. Failure is an action, not a state, not a noun. And we fail, but you really don't fail, because when things don't go your way, even if it's the most rock bottom, you always take something away from that to put forward. And it doesn't mean, well, in some cases, you should fail on purpose in order to learn, but it is through those experiences
wow.
that you mentioned, Lissi, having a hard year last year, right? It conditions us and it raises the threshold of what we think is hard, what we think is difficult, what we think is perfect and not perfect. And if we were willing to just lean into that stuff a little bit more, we'd be better people because we're okay with the fact that we had a typo in an email
Yeah.
and the world didn't end.
It's so funny you say that. I remember I used to have a leader that was very nitpicky about everything when it came to your writing with over emails. And I think that's where my perfectionist in a slight way
Yeah.
came into effect where I'm like overreading things. So you're right. Your leaders, certain people in your life, it really molds to why you do the things that you do. And so
Yep.
I
I
definitely
had
can
one of
agree
those
with
too,
that.
Lissi. I had one of those too. Yeah,
How
I
did
would
you
proofread
feel about
emails
that?
97 times before I'd send them out. And then you'd get a reply, you cringe, like, do I really want to open this, or am I going to get berated for something I spelled wrong, right? Don't be
Right.
one of those leaders, people. There's a
Yes.
leadership lesson. Don't be one of those.
We will break down the do's and don'ts of what we don't want you to be as leaders, but it goes back to that empowering and how to really help someone in that process as a leader. And I think there's so many things we can tap in on leadership, on empathy, on empowerment, or just inspiration in itself. But I think you're truly an inspiration, as in just what you do and how you are making an impact on people's lives. And I think as a coach and a mentor, that goes hand in hand. at the end of the day. So, who has always been your inspiration to get you to where you're at today?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Mine, I think, have been not big, not like big name people. So,
Yeah.
and some of this is actually realization in hindsight that I now know what some of that inspiration was. It may sound corny, but my dad actually, in hindsight, is a big inspiration because he was my math teacher in high school for 3 years.
Oh, wow. How was
And
that?
I am a lot like him. It's actually why I went to engineering school. And you're good at math and
What?
science. Go to engineering school. Okay, Dad, I'll let that other side of my brain that loves people die, right? That's why I'm not an engineer anymore. But what I have found in hindsight is that I have a lot of his teacher and trainer type skills when it comes to helping people understand complex information and relaying that type of stuff to people. And so, like, it's almost in hindsight I've connected the dots that without even knowing it, my those genes have been kind of an inspiration that have helped me understand how I approach kind of coaching and mentorship a little differently. And it's really rooted in the teacher trainer kind of thing he gave
Yeah.
me. And then when I was in college, I worked a lot in student life. That was how I combated the fact that I was in a whole bunch of technical classes. It was like, let's go be an orientation counselor and all this kind of stuff. And there was a woman her name's Ann Witchner, she was the head of the student life department, who was very much what I would consider my first mentor ever.
Oh,
And,
okay.
I worked for her. We designed things together. And I think when I look back, it was where I first understood what it was like to have a mentor, both in like my own professional development and my own human development with some of the things that I got involved with her, like in a life perspective. And also because it was an area of me I was starting to tune into with this whole idea of like liking people and wanting to support people and wanting to support quality of
Yeah.
life. So those are two
Yeah.
that really stand out to me.
Oh, I love that. I love that. It is all about supporting people and the quality of life. Oh, gosh, I wish we could kind of tap into that a little bit. But I think it's so important to support people at the end of the day and help them grow to be better versions of themselves. And, I wish I had that down the line when I started off. And now that you build and you grow, that's all we can do is give back and be able to be those individuals at that too. So, what's one unconventional or surprising piece of career advice would you give someone like that when it comes to self doubt? Because I think it all plays into that empowering.
hmm And I talk a lot about imposter syndrome in my world, and I don't know whether it's unconventional or just the best piece of advice I can have is that look at the facts.
Mm.
Because a lot of times when we get into self doubt or imposter syndrome or those myths, right?
Yeah.
We are in our heads instead of looking at the facts of history. Like, is this actually true based on what has occurred in the past? And 99.9% of time, that's actually true. And here's what's ironic. In those situations, we actually need to lean more on fact so that we can get out of our heads.
Yeah.
However, I'll add a second piece that's the counter or the flip side of that coin is that in a lot of decision making, we actually need to lean into our gut more. We actually have a
That is
really
so hard.
strong mind gut axis and we get in our heads and
Yeah.
it almost causes the same type of reaction of like, well, I can't do this because, but what is like your gut actually telling you to go do again, because what are the facts? Right? What's
Mm.
most likely to happen in the worst case scenario versus if you're facing imposter syndrome, what's really happened in the past that gives that imposter an actual voice? Nothing. So when
Yeah.
you look at when you follow your intuition
Uh-huh.
and you pair that with the reality of the situation and what is likely to happen or not happen, everything becomes so much more possible.
So mental note, follow the gut and not so much of your mind. It's so hard to follow your intuition. I think that sometimes we put blinders up when we know, like your body senses it, right? It knows it and it tells you things. And it's like, quit overthinking, quit having that self-doubt. But in our mind, we're still playing it over and over again. So I definitely can agree with you on that. But that's definitely something as a great insight to take on. Everyone out there, listen to your gut because it's going to tell you from right or wrong, and or lean you in the right direction. So definitely, as someone who balances coaching and speaking and entrepreneurship, you do it all. How do you stay energized? Like literally stay energized and avoid burnout. And is there such thing as being well balanced?
I don't know. I don't really know because I mean, definitely been burnout, but I have a really, really long fuse to get there. And
Yeah,
so but when it's bad, it's really, really bad. Right. So like
yeah,
long fuse, big fall, I would say.
yeah.
And so I just have I have a high capacity for being able to work a lot, give a lot to other people. And I'm very, very grateful and blessed for that fact. That said, one of the ways I know, well, and there actually is a better answer to this question because 3-4 years ago, I worked like 70 hours a week. I coached 40 hours a week.
Oh,
Even the
wow.
most type A extrovert on the planet, of which I am one, should not talk to people on Zoom that much, right? And especially when a time and place when we weren't seeing humans in the flesh. And
Yeah.
so what I realized is I work 4 days a week. I take 3 days off of the weekends. We play outside. I have a husband who is the opposite of me. So he keeps me fun, adventurous, and spontaneous. And so essentially, I have designed a schedule that forces me to take time and do things that replenish me versus things that, while they don't seem like it in the moment or week to week, over time will slowly wear down that fuse.
Yeah. I think also it's the tie-in of just making sure you take some time for yourself too, right?
Yes.
And balance that. And I think you hit that on the nail. Because I'm one of those ones that are so structured that sometimes that I will burn myself out. I will do it, and I have to sometimes be like, no, pull it back, pull it back.
I mean, if it
Or
weren't for him, I would work 90 hours a week. And so there was, that was meant to be, right?
yeah,
Get the complimenting thing. And then, we go out, like we live in the mountains of Colorado. We ski, we mountain bike, we do all these like
uh,
outdoor things. And that's really where I find the counter.
that sounds so nice to live outdoors. I'm such outdoor nature individual too. So just to get that breath of fresh air and reap it in is amazing. But I think like you said, it is, if you don't find that time, then what happens is the time's going to find you, and then you're going to have to sit down. True story.
Yes. You will be forced. True story. I've been there. You will be forced down
Mhm.
whether you listen to the signs pushing you to sit or not. It's going to happen one way or the other. So when the inkling comes, listen to your gut. There you go. Listen to your gut, because you are meant to rest. No one and nothing is meant to go 100%.
Yeah.
Right. And so you have to make sure that you are in it for the long haul, especially,
Mhm.
entrepreneurship, you're wearing all the hats. And in the last year, speaking and traveling more, I've definitely realized like, okay, I'm not as home much. It takes the toll. And so having mechanisms and knowing what helps you have that balance and spend time for yourself, knowing what those things are before you need them is also really, really important, so
Yeah.
that you have your checks and balances in place before things get wacky, which is what happened to me when I was working 70 hours a week, coaching 40. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. Man, I tell you, so much insights that you are like just spitting out, Angie. And I just love, I know I'm like, I love to get a real rounded of everyone. And it's so exciting because not only are you just like booming in the industry, but you also have your podcast as well, No More Mondays, which is also exciting too. But what is something that's maybe your audience or just within general, my audience knows that's a fun fact about you that we could, I'm like,
My hu-
oh,
you ready for this? I don't even know if
yeah,
you know this.
okay.
As part of our my husband and I lived in a 225 square foot school bus that we turned into a tiny home we lived in it for 4 years.
Oh, wow. I've seen those
Until
on
until
TikTok.
until only like 2.5 years ago. So we lived in a schoolie. We bought a gutted yellow school bus before it was cool, before COVID, and DIY built it into a little house that we lived in for 4 years, which was part of our financial strategy to like recover
Wow.
from some things that had gone sideways and allow me to put as much into this business as I can. And the business ended up buying us a house. So there you go.
Oh,
Full
wow.
circle. But yeah, we lived in a bus for 4 years. And let me tell you, being the bus people, quote unquote, makes you really, really interesting at parties.
Oh my. Is it definitely a topic of conversation?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because now I
You'll be
really want
talking
to
about
dig.
bathrooms with strangers a whole lot more than you really want to when you live in a tiny home. But
Like,
it was a fun experience. Also, probably made us even hardier than we already are as mountain people. And again, is one of those things that everything is pretty easy after you live in and build a bus into a house.
No
So
kidding. Oh my gosh. But
there's my fun fact.
that is an amazing fun fact, but that also seems like something that I'm like intrigued even more. I'm like, oh, tell me more about this. I see it on TikTok. Okay, not that I'm a TikTok scroller, but I see it on and I'm like amazed at how people like transition or just transform these buses and then live. And they are so like at peace and this like with the wild and just enjoying life, but they're doing it for financial gain. And I definitely can see that. Now, I don't know if I can do that, but I have no
I've seen people.
DIY in
I mean,
me.
we're free. We are free range adults, no kids, right? Animals are our children. But I have seen people doing that with like families of 5 or 6, and I'm like, okay, now that's a whole new level. But it's really amazing. And I'm not a minimalist. I mean, you can see by the number of books on my shelf, I'm not a minimalist. However, it is really interesting when you're forced to live in a limited space, what you don't need when you don't have room for it. And how that
Mm.
actually is a mentality that kind of continued to carry over as far as like once we moved into a normal size house, I don't find myself, just buying as much random stuff anymore because I couldn't for so many years.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting that in perspective. I think sometimes we think we need more than when we really actually need less. And you still can be
Mm.
happy and you still can survive and be and thrive in that lifestyle. I definitely agree with you on that. I tell you, I don't think there's anything agreed. Can we have like a debate on something?
I know. And I just brought housing into the conversation. So how perfect is that?
all about multifamily. See, everyone's going to
Right.
go out there and get a bus and transform it and stay tiny homes. Right there you go. Oh my gosh. Well, Angie, I know this has been such an exciting like episode with you, and I know just kind of tapping in and just learning a little bit about you. A really great fun fact: who inspired you, how you are empowering others out there in the world, but also continuously staying true to who yourself is. And I think that's most important, which is the authenticity of it, right? And that's thriving. So that's my motto this year of with this podcast is thriving in 25. Do you have any inspiring, thriving words that you would love to share to let the people?
I think it goes back to the whole theme of this conversation is just embrace and be comfortable and lean into who you are and what you have in this world because it is so much easier and a less energy consuming way to show up.
Yeah. There you go. Mic drop. I don't think I really need to add or tap into anything else on that. Well, what are some of the next things coming? Please tell everyone your handles, your information, so they can tap into you as well.
Next thing's coming is a loaded question because I always have about 9 of those in the works. But you can find me, LinkedIn is my main playground, so you can kind of find me there and spouting off multiple times a day. And then I am online at Career Benders on all the various channels. If you want to follow along on the random mountain life, that's Angie on an Adventure on Instagram. So, and as far as what's next for me is I'm really excited to just kind of get out there and kind of spread this message of authenticity and empower people more on, various stages and various engagements. And we'll see what's next.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm so excited to learn from you, grow from you, and just soak it in as well. And I hope my audience and everyone out there does the same. Again, till next time, thank you for tuning in to Thriving in Multifamily and Life. I am your host, Lissi Daniels. Until next time, stay visionary, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Thriving in Multifamily, a visionary podcast. I hope our conversations have inspired you to act and achieve your career goals. Remember, the key to success is to continue learning and growing. And as always, stay visionary. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, and subscribe. Visit multifamilymedianetwork.com to learn more about our industry podcast, thought pieces, and sponsorship opportunities.